Balayage Pamali relies on something called a flexion moment imparted to the neck to do damage. An average man's neck can withstand about a 140 foot-pound flexion moment. Beyond that, soft tissue and even vertebrae can be crushed. By bringing your weight down fast, this move could easily deliver twice that amount of force. And it wouldn't just end a fight, it could leave your...
By bending the elbow across the fulcrum of your hips, you're subjecting the weak joint to the leverage of two strong forces. The pull of your thighs on his shoulder and your hands on his wrists. As little as 1,000 pounds of force can be enough to destroy the elbow. The leverage of the armbar can supply much more than that.
You use the strength of your legs to maintain your dominant position while you secure the choke. Just a few pounds of pressure on the collar of his gi is enough to reduce the blood flow to the brain to a trickle and end the match. Hold this move for 10 seconds and the fighter will black out. Hold it just a bit longer and he's dead.
The sacrifice throw is a simple lesson in conservation of energy. The stronger the opponent attacks, the further he gets thrown. It works like a catapult, where your opponent's momentum supplies the counterweight. The faster he's going, the further he's going to fly, and the harder he's going to land. The throw works just like a crowbar, where your leg is the lever and your hip is the fulcrum. The trick is positioning your body in just the right place. If you're just an inch off the placement of your thigh and hip, the amount of energy needed to throw an opponent can more than double, but performed correctly, Uchimata requires almost no energy, yet it can deliver up to 5,000 pounds of force. If it weren't for the mat, a throw like Uchimata would be enough to cause serious injury or even paralysis.
Because it swings through such a wide arc, the wrist is moving at speeds of up to 43 miles per hour. And since the radius doesn't deflect or compress nearly as much as a fist, it can deliver a staggering blow, like being hit with an axe handle or a baseball bat.
To demonstrate the power of the Kote Uchi, Shinjo-sensei did something incredible.
I'm gonna go over there.
Don't do that to me, please.
Look at that. That's crazy.
You should have felt the power of his hit. Just holding it. I mean, I've held on to 350-pound men in football, and I could barely hold the bat when his wrist came through there. It came through with such power and force and just shattered this thing like a toothpick. Unbelievable.
In a fight, this move could easily generate enough force to crush the soft tissue of an... But the key is rotating your fist 180 degrees right before it strikes the intended target. The twisting snap of the arm maximizes the speed of the punch and magnifies the force of the blow by concentrating the impact on the first two knuckles of your hand. Done correctly, it can deliver as much energy as a bowling ball dropped from the top of a house, more than enough to cause soft tissue damage or break a rib.
The block works by taking the opponent's blow at an angle, which deflects the energy of the blow away from the vulnerable torso. The harder you block, the further his blow will be deflected, and the more open he'll be to a counter strike.
Because the area of impact is focused on a small part of the foot, it magnifies the force of the blow, making it capable of dropping 1,000 pounds of force on your head. It's like getting whacked in the head with a Louisville slugger.
The kick's power comes from the snap of the knee. The snap is created when the quadricep, the largest muscle in the body, contracts and pulls the tendon connecting to the foot over the knee. Using the knee as a pulley, the strength of the quad is enough to accelerate your foot to speeds close to 30 miles per hour. This kick is all about speed. The further the foot travels, the greater its acceleration, and the more dangerous a weapon it becomes. Powered by the muscles of the hip flexor and the quadriceps, By the time your foot reaches your opponent's throat, it's traveling nearly 40 miles per hour. That type of speed yields over 1,000 pounds of force, enough to puncture the Adam's apple and crush your windpipe. The power of the takedown is derived from the simple mechanical advantage you hold over your opponent. By wrapping up his striking leg at the upper thigh, you've placed your opponent in what's called conditional stability. If he remains stationary, he could technically maintain his balance indefinitely. But by driving him backward and initiating a sweep of his other leg, you've added two destabilizing factors, and the loose center of gravity simply cannot hold. The key to this synergy of speed and power is punch technique, punch location, and punch frequency. With your elbows tucked in behind your fist, the energy of each punch is maximized. And because the punch is delivered to your opponent's core along a center line, the more directly that force is transmitted to his body. The effect is similar to that of continually slamming a battering ram against a door. No matter how strong, it can only sustain so many blows before it collapses.
During the disarm is basically a judo wrist lock and uses many of the same principles. By pulling your attacker forward as you turn, he loses his balance, giving you control of his wrist. The barrel of the gun then becomes a lever, allowing you to take the gun. Because you are using the muscles of your torso, which can deliver up to 10 times more force than the muscles of the wrist, the disarm works against an opponent who is much stronger than you. Doing the 360 defense requires you keep your body in motion at all times, using your arms to defend different angles of attack. The key is keeping your arms at an oblique angle, with your hands open and straight, so that you don't take any blows straight on. Each is deflected down the angle of your forearm, which reduces its impact. Because you don't have time to cock your arm in a surprise attack, bursting's effectiveness doesn't come from the rotational power of the torso. Instead, it's driven by the legs, which hurl you forward into your opponent. Both the block and the strike land with 300 pounds of force, more than enough to collapse the windpipe or fracture the delicate bones of the face.
But the real damage from the knee bar doesn't come from gravity. It comes from leverage. Once the knee is locked, your hips act like a fulcrum, and his leg acts like a lever, multiplying any force you apply. So even though the ligaments and tendons around the knee can sustain 1,700 newtons of force, the knee bar can load a lot more than that, enough to completely destroy the joint.
By taking control of your opponent's leg, you turn his hip into a pivot point. And there are two forces being imparted about the pivot point, one by the arm above and one by the sweep below. These forces act as a couple, resulting in your opponent's rotation that slams him right to the deck. And given the speed of rotation and the force of gravity, that impact could cause permanent injury.
The key to the reap is to get your opponent's center of mass outside his stability zone. To do that, the Marine pushes his opponent at a location above the center of mass, while using his sweeping leg to create a tripping point, which is below his opponent's center of mass. Once the loss of stability has occurred, gravity does the work, and the damage. On the ground and on his back, your opponent is now vulnerable to any number of finishing strikes. Working much like a nutcracker, your forearm and biceps apply pressure to your opponent's carotid arteries. Located on either side of the trachea, these two arteries are the only way to get blood to the brain. It can take less pressure than squeezing an orange to stop the flow of blood to the arteries. And with no blood flow, the brain shuts down almost instantly. Fight over.
It's only 5 to 8 seconds and then they're knocked out. And as soon as you release it, the blood will come back to their head. We don't teach air chokes in the Marine Corps because it's like a 15 to 20 seconds for an actual air choke to actually take effect, whereas a blood choke is quick and fast.